Okay. So I'm going to send 3 this way. I'm going to send 2 this way. And we're going to talk about priests. Okay? So until recent times, if you were making a list of all the different ways that a country could be organized, theocracy was, on the standard list. It's, part of the, things that can be done. A theocracy, which we normally understand as a rule by God, but theocracies aren't really rules by God, right? They're really rules by priests, right? So if you look at Iran is a theocracy, but Allah is not ruling directly, right? The Ayatollah is ruling directly. So we can ask the question, who actually rules when God rules, right? Who's actually in charge, okay? As Spinoza notes, God can only govern a human community with a little help from human beings. So it's either a single person or a number of people who plausibly claim to be chosen by God. And as we saw last week, in the biblical text, the way that rule by God was done was through the Shoftim, but it was intermittent, right? And although God is in charge in the time of the judges, there's a lot of anarchy going on as well. Okay, so it's not a great system. So, just to make it bold-faced, in the time before the kingdom of Israel, when God did not raise up a savior for Israel, there was no visible form of government and no established institutions and no authorized agents. So the system of government during the period of the judges is anemic. Okay? But if you want to understand theocracy differently, there's another group of Israelites that stand as good candidates to be in charge, and that would be the priests, right? They're a good candidate for theocracy. Why? It's hereditary, like kings. They have an obvious divine connection. They have this sort of, line to God. I mean, so if we're going to have rule of the country by God, priests would be a good option for making that happen. Okay? So in any religion where priests play this kind of mediating role between God and humanity, humanity is likely to find itself ruled by its mediators. So, in the Catholic See, the Pope is in charge. Okay. The Bible, the priests do not rule. Right? The priests are not in charge. There is, God help us, a separation between church and state in the Bible, right? There is, right? I mean, the kings do the ruling once you get the king, and the priests do the priesting. And they're not in charge of keeping the kings honest either, by the way. The prophets are the ones who challenge the kings, right? The priests just kind of roll along, right? Yeah. True, but again, that's not the priest challenging the king.
No, it's the king challenging the priest.
Right. But in terms of representing God's interests as against the ruling party, it's the prophets who are doing that, right? So in the system of government, it's the prophets who are the loyal opposition, and the kings are in charge, but the priests aren't doing any ruling at all, okay? We have no political role for priests in the Bible, Okay? But when we get into exile, things change. Okay? We're supposed to come back by prophecy that says that Zerubbabel is going to be there, and with the high priest, they will rule the new nation after Cyrus allows us to rebuild after the Babylonian exile. Except the neat thing is, Zerubbabel drops off the face of existence. And in the second Commonwealth, so to speak, the Jewish existence, the Second Temple period, it's the priests who are in charge. The priests take over political power in Second Temple Judaism. And even when the Hasmoneans come in, the Hasmonean kings, they start out as priests, right? They don't say we're kings because we're descendants of David. They say we're kings because we're already in charge anyways, and let's just upgrade our title from priest to king. Okay. So, let's see, got that. Later on, the priests being charged, when the rabbis come along, the rabbis are going to challenge the priests. They're going to try to exert some control over it, okay? So, let's take a look at what's going on with the priests, okay? So let's start with text number 1. This is on page 1, which has no page number, because it's the first page. So in the Bible, Phil, why don't you read for us a little bit Exodus 19:1-6.
On the third moon after the Israelites had gone forth from the land of Egypt, on that very day they entered the wilderness of Sinai. Having journeyed from Egypt, they entered the wilderness of Sinai and camped in the wilderness. They saw in Cantor and that Moses went up to God. The Lord called to him from the mountain, saying, "Thus shall you say to the house of Jacob and declare to the children of Israel, you have seen what I did to the Egyptians, how I ordered you on eagle's wings, and brought you to me. Now then, if you will obey me faithfully and keep my covenant, you shall be my treasured possession among all the peoples. Indeed, all the earth is mine, that you shall be to me a kingdom of priests and a holy nation. These are the words that you shall speak to the children of Israel."
Great. So, who are the priests?
Division.
All of us. We're all the priests. Now, what does that really mean?
None of us are priests.
Okay. So, what are possibilities? Possibility number 1, we are a nation where every single person is a priest. Does that make sense?
No.
No. Although, functionally now it's true, because we're all our own priests. But there are no priests. Yes. Okay, number 2, who gets to be a priest in the biblical conception, at least before the Golden Calf?
Well, wait a minute. Priest or
Either. Who gets to be a priest? Not worried about Levites yet.
Aaron is just,
Well,
what you're asking is something else.
yeah. Who gets to have priestly function?
Who were supposed to be the
Right.
firstborn,
Mhm.
but they were changed back for
Right. Now, the firstborn were the priests. And, hang on.
The associates.
okay, so Phil's making a distinction between the Levites and the priests. Now, I want to open us up to the possibility that the Torah has more than one hand writing it. And some of the people who are writing it, when they say priests, they think sons of Aaron. And other people, when they write it, when they say priests, they mean Levites.
Yes, and so therefore in Deuteronomy, you have a Kohanim Levi.
Right.
And you only have it at that
Right,
word
yeah.
in Deuteronomy.
Yep. And even to the interesting thing, when you look into the, later on, how many high priests does King David have? There's two. There's two high priests. There's the Aaronic one, and there's the Moshite one.
What is moonshine?
The priests who are descended from Moses, and the priests who are descended from Aaron. That kind of disappears later on.
There are priests that were descended from Moses.
Sure, there's a whole line of them. But the thing is, they lost the battle, so they're not the priests, right? But there are two high priests, like there's the Tzedekite and there's the other one. So just complicating things a little. But we're all supposed to be priests. Here's the third possibility. This is how I usually interpret this line here about us all being priests, is that Israel is to the other nations as our priests are to us.
Or they're going,
Yeah.
Aha, we are a light unto the nation. Okay, fine. So let's narrow down who gets to be a priest. Okay, so
Carol.
no, I'm just stretching. But Carol, yes.
Consecration of Aaron. You shall bring forth your brother Aaron with his sons from among the Israelites to serve me as priests. Aaron, Nadab, and Abihu, Eleazar, and Ithamar, the sons of Aaron. Make sacral vestments for your brother Aaron for dignity and adornment. Put the sacral vestments on Aaron, anoint him, consecrate him, that he may serve me as priest. Then bring his sons forward, put tunics on them, and anoint them as they have anointed their father, that they may serve me as priests. This their anointing shall serve them for everlasting priesthood throughout the ages.
Okay, so let's narrow it down. We all used to be priests. No, now it's just the sons of Aaron. Okay, so what does it mean to be a priest? What's special about being a priest? And so here we have in text number 3 is the entire chapter 16. I'm just going to select a little bit for us here. Okay, this is the chapter that we read when? Yom Kippur morning. Okay, the high priest is the only person who gets to go into the Holy of Holies. Okay, he has this special relationship. Okay, offers the offering and then the goat and the whole thing. Here's what it is. Okay, it's all about Aaron. He is the guy. There is a special, unique relationship between priest and God. What makes Aaron the priest special is he gets to go into the Holy of Holies and not die. Okay? And we have the system where even with the tent and with the compound, everyone's allowed in the camp. Only Levites are allowed in the compound. Only priests are allowed in the tent, and only Aaron's allowed in the Holy of Holies. Okay? More or less, right? It's
So how does Israelite bring this in?
they're allowed to come into the front half of the courtyard, but not the back half of the courtyard. Yeah, it's the job of the Levites to keep the Israelites from getting into the priest's area. Okay, so if we look at our next text here, this is exactly, I think, what Phil was referring to. Okay? Harriet, why don't you read us a little bit about this trespass by King Uzziah? It's page 4, text number 4.
When he was strong, he was so arrogant, he acted corruptly. He trespassed against his God by entering the temple of the Lord to offer incense on the incense altar. Priest Azariah, with 80 other brave priests of the Lord, followed him in and confronted King Uzziah, said to him, "It is not for you, Uzziah, to offer incense to the Lord, but for the Aaronite priests who have been consecrated to offer incense. Get out of the sanctuary, for you have trespassed. There will be no glory in it for you from the Lord God." Uzziah, holding the censer and ready to burn incense, got angry. But as he got angry with the priest, leprosy broke out on his forehead in front of the priest, the house of the Lord, beside the incense altar. When the chief priest Azariah and all the other priests looked at him, his forehead was leprous. So they rushed him out of there. He too made haste to get out, for the Lord had struck him with a plague. King Uzziah was a leper until the day of his death. He lived in isolated quarters as a leper, for he was cut off from the house of the Lord, while Jotham, his son, was in charge of the king's house and governed the people of the land.
Okay,
Can't mess around.
can't mess around, right? So the priests are jealous of their territory. Nobody else can do priest stuff. But they're not interested in ruling over, right? They're just putting the king in this place. By the way, who's one of the king? Wasn't it like King Solomon offering sacrifices in the temple?
We offered sacrifices.
Yeah.
Consecration at the
Yeah.
temple.
Didn't King David offer sacrifices? So there's a little looseness there. But certainly by,
Well, King David, there was no temple.
yeah, but the tent. So
Was there?
No, the traveling.
the tent was at Shiloh.
Yeah, the traveling sanctuary that moved around.
So the priests are jealous of their area. Okay. Now we need to add in the Levites because we need to figure out what's going on with them. So Helene, would you like to read for us text number 5?
On my device, I can't get to the text. Sorry.
I'm so sorry. It doesn't open up, or tell you what, let me share my screen. Then you can see it. Hang on. We're gonna do that. And I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna share my screen. And yeah. Share this. And there, can you read it now?
Kind of.
Yeah, I can make it bigger if that'll help.
Number 5, the Lord is their portion.
Yeah,
The Levitical priests, the whole tribe of Levi, shall have no territorial portion with Israel. They shall live only off the Lord's offerings by fire as their portion, and shall have no portion among their brother tribes. The Lord is their portion, as he promised them. This then shall be their priest's due from the people. Everyone who offers a sacrifice, whether an ox or a sheep, must give the shoulder, the cheeks, and the stomach to the priest. You shall also give him the first fruits of your new grain, and wine and oil, and the first shearing of your sheep. For the Lord your God has chosen him and his descendants out of all your tribes to be in attendance for service in the name of the Lord for all time.
okay. So this is adding in the Levites. Now, what is this describing? I mean, what are the Levites being described as? What do they sound like in modern terms?
Actually,
The obvious priests, they sound like priests.
Yeah. They sound like public servants, right? They're employees. They're employees of the state. They're provided income by the state. They can't, they're functionaries, right? No? No, you disagree?
We get the taxes.
Lord's offering.
Mhm.
So that's not part of the state.
Uh,
They also have a problem with there's a disconnect between the first paragraph here and the second.
Okay.
Because the first time it definitely says that the Levitical priests. In the second paragraph, it doesn't take people with Levitical.
Right. Because in Deuteronomy, it's not making a distinction between, it's using the words willy-nilly. Okay? It's clearly when it says this then shall be the priest's due, it's talking about the Levitical priests. So, I mean, the halacha later is gonna sort it out, right?
Right.
But essentially, you're not allowed to own farmland, you're not allowed to own income-bearing stuff. Your job is to make sacrifices happen. When someone brings a sacrifice, you get a portion of it, and that's your portion, and that's how you're sustained. You're a tax collector who keeps part of the taxes for yourself.
Have you become a Levite?
Daddy's a Levite.
Who is?
If your dad is a Levite, they're tribe.
It's
But
their
how
tribe.
did the first Levite, wasn't he a descendant of?
So there's this
Aaron?
guy, no, was he Aaron's grandfather, great-grandfather was named Levi.
Right,
So Aaron is a Levite.
okay.
So the Levites include all the Levites, and the Kohanim, the priests, are a subfamily of the Levites. So they all get to be Levite because they all are male descendants of Levi, who with his brother Shimon murdered all the people in the town of Shechem.
Thank you
very
much.
Just to remind you, okay? The Levites do a lot of killing. They really do. That's why they are funneled into the butchery business, because at least if they like, you like knives, you like killing things, okay, be the butchers. It'll be better for you. Okay?
Okay, so now I'm trying to remember, presume it's Deuteronomy, and it has to do with, or maybe it has to do with redemption of land.
Yeah.
And don't the Levites have farmland outside of town?
Yeah. The Levites are allowed to farm the land within a certain radius of the town. Yes.
Okay, so therefore they are not public servants in that they have their own farmland.
Yes, except that farmland is being granted to them because they are like public servants. And I would argue that if you wanted a modern English translation to describe that land, I would call it a glebe.
Believe it?
Glebe.
From the district in Ottawa.
What?
It sounds like a district in Ottawa.
Good.
The Green.
Good. Tell me about the glebe in Ottawa. Where is it?
It's in part of town, and there was a high school there.
Yeah.
And
Is there a church near there? A cathedral?
cathedral, not that I'm aware of.
Or
There are
church?
churches, though. Of course, there are churches all over the place.
A glebe, which is a word I learned reading a novel, a science fiction novel, fantasy novel, by a fellow who happens to be or was the literary critic for the New York Times. So he had this vocabulary, okay? A glebe is a garden plot that is adjacent to the rectory, which is where the priest lives near the church.
I thought the priests lived near the cemetery.
No. Okay, so a glebe is a parcel of land set aside by the church for the priest to grow his own vegetable garden. Right, it's called a glebe. I would argue that the Levitical cities, to the extent that they have this land assigned that belongs to all of them in common and none of them in particular, is their glebe being provided to them. Because if they move to a different city, they can't use that glebe anymore. So I'm still holding that they are public servants. They're on the public purse. They're on the dole. Okay? and we've all learned a new word. And I have to tell you, I used glebe in Wordle, and it said, wow, you've got a nice vocab. That's not a likely answer. Glebe is not. I was so disappointed.
But they knew it was a word.
Yeah, they didn't reject it. They just said, wow, nice vocabulary. Okay.
But
Yep.
in the Levites,
Yep.
but not the descendants of Aaron,
Yep.
the priests.
Yep.
Their job within the temple is what?
Okay. So as it plays out, the Levites assist the priests.
They're the schleppers.
They schlep things, they sing, it's an evolving role.
So they do have a
Yeah,
role, though.
But don't focus on it too much, because we're gonna lose interest in them. We're gonna go on to the priests.
Okay, all right. But if you're saying that public servants, they have to have a role, and they do have a role.
Right, they do. They have this role, right? Okay, so, so the priest is set aside early up to be as a judge. So they have a judicial role, right? So we have, my brain is falling out. Milt, can you read for us text number 6?
If a case is too baffling for you to decide, be it a controversy over homicide, civil law, or assault, matters of dispute in your courts, you shall promptly repair to the place that the Lord your God will have chosen and appear before the Levitical priest or the magistrate in charge at the time and present your problem. When they have announced to you the verdict in the case, you shall carry out the verdict that is announced to you from that place that the Lord chose, observing scrupulously all their instructions to you. You shall act in accordance with the instructions given you and the ruling handed down to you. You must not deviate from the verdict that they announced to you, either to the right or to the left. Should a man act presumptuously and disregard the priest's charge with serving there the Lord your God or the magistrate, that man shall die. Thus you will sweep out evil from Israel. All the people will hear and be afraid and will not act presumptuously again.
Okay. So in terms of where this text is located in Deuteronomy, it is the paragraph directly in front of the law of the king. The law of the king said, if you want to have a king, you can have a king, right? Justice comes from whom? Who is the source of justice in Israelite society?
Judge, I think, the list says it's crazy.
Well, higher up than that.
God.
God is the source of justice, right? I mean, God's the legislature. God's the source of justice.
It's
Okay.
too easy.
Who is responsible for implementing God's justice? Is it the king or is it the priest? It's the priest. The king is responsible for your day-to-day affairs, the things that are unimportant, like should we go to war, the economy, things like that. Whereas the priest is in charge of the important things, like sacrifices and justice. Okay?
How can you distinguish justice from the things that, that the king is in charge?
So the king can appoint magistrates, but ultimately they're just they're just making the life of the priests easier, right? They're like, the simple things you can figure out on your own, but the hard things bring to Moses. Okay? So the king is subject to the rules of the priest, right?
To the verdicts.
The verdicts of the priest, right? So the priests have this role. Okay, so they don't have a political role yet, but they have a religious role, and they've got a access to God role, and they've got a justice role, right? Judiciary.
How does the judiciary role work? In other words,
You bring a dispute to the priest, and they give you the answer. Actually, how it really works is you go to the local magistrate, and they give you an answer. Maybe you'll take it up to the king, and he gives you an answer. But if the king's not sure about it, go to the priest, and he'll set you straight.
and people have access to the priests.
Presumably. Do we know anything other than what we have in the books? No, there's no recordings of things, okay?
But in the first sentence, it says, if a case is too baffling for you to decide, what's the you?
The you is anyone amongst yourselves, right? Look, if I back my car into someone else's car, we settle it with each other. If the damage is little, I give him some money and he goes away. If the damage is a lot, we call insurance agencies and they settle money and it goes away. But only if I'm really, really unhappy do I sue them in court or call the police, okay? Because if we can't come to an agreement, then we need to go to an arbitrator, right? So if you can't arbitrate something between yourself, then the priest will help you out. Okay? So this is a place that has no bureaucracy.
And if you don't agree with the priest, you die, that's it.
Well, if you don't agree with the priest, then bad stuff happens. Okay. So looking at this evolving role, and by the way, Deuteronomy 17 is used by the rabbis to justify their own judicial powers, because the rabbis succeed the priests as representatives of God's will. As the rabbis.
So good.
Yeah. So next is the priest as a teacher. Okay. So Sandy, number 7.
Priest is teacher, and of Levi he said, let your Thummim and Urim be with your faithful one, whom you tested at Massah, challenged at the waters of Meribah. They shall teach your laws to Jacob, and your instructions to Israel. They shall offer you incense to Seder, and whole offerings on your altar.
Okay, so this is Jacob on his deathbed. I'm sorry, this is Moses on his deathbed, and he's giving the blessings to the tribes. And saying, Levi, your job is to teach. Okay, the Tumim and the Urim. The Tumim and the Urim, we're not sure what they were, but they were laws. They were a device to determine God's will. Now, either they were behind the breastplate of judgment with the 12 tribal stones in them, and they would light it up in different patterns, and you could read it like it was a switchboard. Or maybe they were dice, and it came up one or it came up no. The Urim and the Tumim, at the very best, could give you a yes-no answer. It's a way of consulting God. How do you consult God's will? God, like Odin, controls the lotteries. Okay? You want to determine God's will, you throw a dice. And whatever, you flip a coin, that's God's will. That's how we know it, right? That's why when they're on the boat with Jonah, they draw lots to see who's the problem, and God tells them very clearly, Jonah's the problem because he gets the lot, right? When we have an election here in the United States and there's a tie and you want to know who is God's will that should have won, we flip a coin, or you draw cards from a deck, or whatever the local legislation says, okay? But that's God's will, okay? God controls the lotteries, which is why,
Pray before you bet.
when you buy a lottery ticket, you should only buy one. Because if you're gonna win, you only need one. To buy more than one ticket is showing a lack of faith in God.
People don't realize that.
Except if it's a 50-50 for the temple. Right?
Yeah, that's just a donation.
Right.
And you're gonna donate your winnings back as well, so you know, okay?
You know, you can buy the one number, and if you put in 20 and you pick how many plays you want, okay?
Again,
It's 10
that's
weeks,
outside of
It
the
stretches
thing
it
here.
out
Okay.
in 10 weeks, that's
the
interesting.
one number.
Okay.
It's from a woman who sounds like she knows what.
I have played, I don't anymore.
So the problem with the Bible is The biblical accounts of the authority and function of the priest and of their relationship to the king and the prophet and the judge are inconsistent. The Bible's not a consistent document. It reads as if more than one hand is writing it. Because more than one hand is writing it. Okay, so there's different conceptions of priesthood being shown in the Bible as we understand it, okay? If God is transcendent and unconnected to the world, so too are the priests. If God is visceral and in the world, so too are the priests. And these are these two different opposite notions of what a priest should be doing, which are present because we've got two different notions of what God is. Some of the Bible wants God to have a body and feelings and emotions and active interference, and some of our sources want God to be completely hands-off. Okay? And our connection with God is we offer sacrifices and he smells things. So, it's complex, okay? So either the priest is important or the priest is unimportant. And there's a lot we can talk about that, and I'm not going to. Okay, who keeps the priests in line? So that's text number 8. So, and now, O priests, this charge for you. Unless you obey and unless you lay it to my heart and do honor to my name, said the Lord of hosts, I will send a curse and turn your blessings into curses. Okay? I will put you under the ban. I will strew dung upon your faces, dung upon the festal sacrifices. You shall be carried out in this heat. Know then, I've sent this charge to you, that my covenant with Levi may endure, said the Lord. I had with him a covenant of life and well-being. Okay? Proper rulings were in his mouth. Now, this is the guy who murdered like half the town of Shechem. Okay? Proper rulings were in his mouth, nothing perverse on his lips, serving with complete loyalty, and held the many back from iniquity. 4, the lips of a priest guard knowledge, and men seek rulings from his mouth, for he is a messenger of the Lord of hosts. But you have turned away from that course. You have made many stumble through your rulings. You've corrupted the covenant of the Levites, said the Lord of hosts. And I, in turn, have made you despicable and vile in the eyes of all the people, because you disregard my ways and show partiality in your rulings. Okay? Okay. So, judicial authority of the priests has to be contingent upon their the justness of their rulings, right? They have to represent God. Shall the judge of all the world not do justice? Okay. So far in the Bible, and throughout the Bible, the priests either have a purely ritual role, or they have a judicial role, or they have a teaching role. But the one thing they do not have is a political role. Okay? God rules the country. However, God is not ruling the country through the priests. Okay. So Spinoza is going to try to help us understand this concept of theocracy. Okay? Here's the problem. The problem is that after Moses, how do you administrate, right? Moses was a single spokesperson for God. There were no other prophets going on in Moses' time. But after Moses, no single person speaks with God directly. Nobody's promulgating laws from God. We're not getting any new laws. And nobody's issuing commands. You know, so the priests are not really the rulers, according to Spinoza. They're the custodians. Right? God set up a perfect system, and the priests are just keeping it running. Okay. I'll be the speaker for Spinoza.
As long as I don't get excommunicated. People were commanded to build a dwelling to serve as the palace of God, the state's supreme sovereign. This palace was to be built at the expense not of one man, but of the entire people, so that the dwelling where God was to be consulted should belong to the nation as a whole. The Levites were chosen to be the courtiers and administrators of this palace of God, while Aaron, the brother of Moses, was chosen to be at their head, in the second place, as it were, to God their king, to be succeeded by his sons by hereditary right. Therefore, Aaron, as next to God, was the supreme interpreter of God's laws, giving the people the answers of the divine oracle and entreating God on the people's behalf. Now, if along with these functions he had held the right of issuing commands, his position would have been that of an absolute monarch. But this right was denied him. In general, the whole tribe of Levi was so completely divested of civil rights that they did not even have a legal share of territory like the other tribes, provide them at least with a livelihood. Moses ordained that they should be maintained by the rest of the people, yet always be held in the highest honor by the common people as an holy tribe dedicated to God.
And then it talks about Joshua's the military commander, etc. Okay. So the priests seem to have this very circumscribed role. As far as theocracies go, it's not going so well. Okay? It's not a theocracy like we would understand. Okay, so now we're going to take a little diversion into books that are not part of the Jewish Bible. Okay? And so we've got the Wisdom of Ben Sira, which is from the Apocrypha, and there's a whole, and then we've got, oh, the Maccabees, yeah, we've got the Maccabees. And then we even have some Josephus. So we're not going to read all of this because it's way too long. Okay? But let me just tell you what Ben Sira is talking about, because he's talking about the splendor of the high priest. And it's a great poem, and it goes on and on and on and on and on, and you have it for your enjoyment. Okay. The Second Commonwealth is founded as a Jewish province in the Persian Empire with the return of the exiles in the 6th century. Okay? Carrying an imperial license from Cyrus, the returnees rebuild the temple in Jerusalem, led by Ezra the priest and Nehemiah the provincial governor, and they establish a community around this brand new temple. At the head of the community stands the high priest. In the splendor of his figure, you can read at length in this selection from Ben Sira. Okay. The book of Ben Sira that we're looking at here is part of the Apocrypha. The Apocrypha are books written by Jews for Jews that the rabbis weren't that interested in, and so the only people who saved them from the dust heap of history is the Catholic Church, because the Catholic Church included the Apocrypha in their Bible. That's why these texts often, the original Hebrew or Aramaic is lost, but we have the Greek. Okay, so thank God for the Catholic Church. They preserved the Maccabees, they preserved Ben Sira, they preserved all these Jewish books. Okay? So the Apocrypha is Jewish stuff that the rabbis took a pass on. Why did they take a pass on it? Either it had a message they didn't like, or it wasn't godly enough. Okay. So the high priest is an exemplar of the father of the world. So he's got an everlasting covenant, and he's got special clothing, and only he gets to wear the clothes, and he does the sacrifices, and there's oil, and the commandments and the judgments and the statutes, he teaches them, and other people were jealous, like Datan and Abiram were jealous in the wilderness, but no, Aaron got the full glory. Oh my. So if you skip down to page 8, 50 here, it gives a little bit more current history, okay? That first chapter there is the history of the priest up until that point. Now, the leaders of his brothers and the pride of his people was the high priest, Simon of Onias, okay? And he laid the foundation for the high double walls, and he dug the cistern, and he saved the people from ruin, and he was like a morning star, and cypress tree they put on his robe, and and
This is more like a function of the king.
yeah, it is. It sounds a lot like the function of the king, because in the Second Temple period, the priests lost the king's representative and took his powers for themselves.
When the priest lost the king's representation, where did he go?
He just kind of disappeared off the face of the earth. Look, if you know how in the Hanukkah Haftarah we talk about Zerubbabel, you know, Zerubbabel on the way back from Babylon to Judah, Zerubbabel is going, and Ezra and Nehemiah are going, and Zerubbabel doesn't seem to make it all the way there. He drops off the face of the earth, and when they get there, Ezra and Nehemiah are not worried about the representative of King David. Okay? It's just not on the list. Okay? They just kind of took charge. So, but there's a reason for this.
What time period are we talking about this?
We're talking 400 before the Common Era, maybe 300, 200. But here's to understand, okay? Other than the Hasmonean window, Judah was never independent. Judah is a vassal state of Babylon. Later it's going to be a vassal state of other people. And if I am the ruler of a foreign country, like Persia or Babylon, and I want to administrate my state, I want to set up a center of power that I can control the people. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use a theocratic model. I'm going to rebuild the temple. The temple is going to be the center of commerce because 10% of everything is flowing through it. Everyone has to go to it. It's the only place you can connect with God. So the temple is now going to be the center of the economy. I want to keep those people under control. So I am going to choose who the high priest is going to be. And that's what happens, right? The high priest is chosen by the foreign rulers, and the high priest represents the foreign rulers to the people. But in order to rule over the people effectively, the high priest isn't going to say, I am in charge because I paid the highest bribe to Cyrus to become the high priest this year. They're going to say, I'm in charge because I'm the high priest and I represent God. Okay? So there's a little cynical real power there. Okay? And it's easier to control people with a religious system than it is with a purely civil system. Okay? Because in a civil system, it's just you against the government. Their religious systems do against God. Okay. So if you look at if we look at the Hasmoneans for a moment, okay, Maccabees. Okay. First book of Maccabees, written around the year 100 minus, okay, quasi-biblical idiom, and portrays the Maccabees as the saviors, a long tradition of saviors of Israel. Okay. The revolts led by Mattathias and his son Judah, neither of whom really survived. The selection describes the subsequent appointment of another son, Simon, as a high priest. And you can read it in parallel to the chapters of Samuel that describe the founding of the ancient Israelite monarchy. Okay, this is like a foundational thing. This is how they are organizing things. Okay? When the people heard these things, how shall we thank Simon and his sons? Because we have pushed the bad guys out of the temple. So they wrote down on 2 tablets of bronze. Well, maybe 3. Okay, on the 18th day of Elul, 172nd year, which is the year of the great high priest Simon. Okay. Here is the assembly, and this is what we proclaimed. Since the wars often occurred, Simon exposed himself to danger in order that the sanctuary might be preserved, and we rallied the nation that became the high priest, gathered to the people. When the enemies invaded the country, lay hand on the sanctuary, Simon rose up, fought for the nation, spent a lot of money, fortified the towns, and provided for them. The people saw Simon's faithfulness and glory, and they won, and they made him the leader and the high priest. Leader and high priest. Because he had done all these things, okay? He sought in every way to exalt his people. In his days, things prospered in his hands. Gentiles were put out of the country, and as were also those of the city of David. He built us up a citadel, and they fixed things. Okay? Flip the page. In view of all these things, King Demetrius, the overlord, right, confirmed him in the high priesthood. Okay? Made him one of his friends, paid him high honors, for he had heard that the Jews were addressed by the Romans as friends and allies and brothers. The Romans had received the envoys of Simon with honor. So they're playing Rome and Persia off of each other. Just, to be nice. Okay, the Jews resolved Simon should be their leader forever until he gets until a trustworthy prophet rise, and he should be their governor, right? Nobody can nullify his decisions, or they'll be punished. All the people agreed to grant Simon the right to act in accordance with these decisions. So he's also got consent of the people. He's got the social contract, right? Yep.
They say until a trustworthy prophet should arise.
Yeah, which is never gonna happen.
Okay,
But they're just putting it in there because it's like, look, I understand that what we're doing is not 100% legitimate. But until God says otherwise, let's
The
do it.
Messiah comes.
Right.
and the prophets were not lawmakers, we're not governors, right?
No, the prophets are extinct. There are no more prophets at this point.
Until
They're
hell
just saying,
freezes over.
until, right? It's like, it's not the state of Israel. Until such time as a constitutional conference is held and we put in a constitution, these will be the basic laws.
Some of them more basic than others.
Okay. Okay. So, yeah. So the high priest is also the prince. We have now theocratic rule. So they finally achieved theocracy. Okay. Very nice. Now, we remember our friend Josephus. Josephus becomes employed by the Romans, and he is really trying to defend the Jewish people from bad press. He wants us to look good, right? And he is responsible. It's the first recorded instance of the word theocracy. He coins the word, ruled by kings. So,
Priest.
good priests. Yeah. So, where is this? Okay, so he's trying to give some education here. Yeah, there's endless variety in the details of the customs and laws which prevail in the world at large. And what he's trying to do is he is trying to explain theocracy in terms that the Greco-Romans are going to understand. Okay? Josephus is a priest, he's a Pharisee, and he's a client of the Flavian emperors. Okay? So he is trying to vindicate the Levitical priesthood as being in charge of the people, but he's got a problem. He can't vindicate the Levitical priesthood with reference to the Torah because his audience doesn't believe in the Torah. Right? He has to justify the Jewish way of doing things to people who don't accept any of the premises that the Jewish system is based on. So he needs to find alternative rationale for why the Jewish theocracy is a good idea, which is not an easy challenge. Okay? So Greeks understand things like monarchy and aristocracy and oligarchy and democracy. That's how you rule a city. So he creates this word theocracy to represent the Jewish version of how we run our affairs. That's not exactly a monarchy or an aristocracy or an oligarchy or a democracy. Okay? As the character of a city is determined by its regime, the regime furnishes the central principle of the classification of the cities and therefore of the political science. Okay? So there's no biblical counterpart to this, right? We don't do theology, the Jews do.
Still don't.
I know. So, so he talks about the Levitical priesthood is assimilating into the prevalent model of political authority among the educated Gentiles of his time. Okay? It's a paradox. Okay? Every previous regime name had identified the human rulers of a given society. So for the rule of the priests, he invents a name for it, right? So instead of saying this is ruled by priests, he's saying this is ruled by God. God formed the regime, and it's just the priests who are administrating it. Okay? God's in charge. Okay? So it's in the theocracy, that's a problem, right? Because systems of government are supposed to be able to legislate and regulate, as well as organize and administrate. And if it's formed by God, we've got a problem because there's been no new legislation for thousands of years. And no new regulation for thousands of years. The rabbis will solve that, by the way, okay? So there's no clean cluttering the landscape. So Josephus sees himself as a Republican. He wants to praise Judah as a republic by praising theocracy or rule by priests. And what he wants to make it good is that this is before Julius Caesar, right? So he's trying to show we're not a monarchy either, because Rome doesn't like monarchies. They like republics. So I want to show you, we're really a republic.
Because of the empire.
Yeah. Okay. So here's the question. Can we understand Josephus to imply an exaltation of Republican self-government or political life, understood politically, if it's really this theocracy thing, right? Okay? It's just not gonna work for him, right? Now, he's got another problem. He's using the word priests, and priest is understood differently in the Greek world than it is in our world, right? So Aristotle understands that aristocracy is rejection. You want to reject the priest group, right? But Aristotle is imagining priests as he saw them, not as rulers, but as nonpartisan servants, the way it was in our Bible, right? Priests could give no special guidance in the Greek world because they had no political power, right? But Josephus is defending a rule by priests by saying, you know, it's on divine revelation, it's conformity with the will of God, it fits God's will, it doesn't really work. Doesn't work for the Bible. But in the post-biblical period, Simon the Just and the Hasmoneans were priests and kings. Okay? So do we understand priests as being as rulers or not, right? In the Bible, they're not, but throughout the Second Temple and into the next section, they are, until the rabbis take over. And why do the rabbis take over from them? They take over for them because when the temple's destroyed, the priests have no power. Okay? So, here's a little bit of Josephus. Page 12. For us, with our conviction that the original institution of the law was in accordance with the will of God, it would be rank impiety not to observe it. Right? If law is from God, you should observe it. Who can alter it? How could it be more beautiful? How could it be improved? What could be finer? Okay? So, the law is perfect. Could there be more saintly government than that? The one that's following the perfect law. Okay? We have one temple, and priests are always busy, and it all runs swimmingly. I have a feeling what I've just said has been very confusing.
That's what it says here, though.
Yeah, I mean, but it's,
So they haven't looked to spread out yet. This is all controlled to kind of one place.
yeah.
I'm trying to.
But there's also community in Babylonia,
Mhm.
which.
Concurrently.
What?
Concurrently.
Yes,
Okay, yeah,
but they have their own system, which is quite different.
right, the Babylons have their system, right? And the Romans have their system, all that.
No, but the Jews.
The Jewish
Babylon,
community in Babylon.
The Jewish community in Babylon,
They've got Babylon.
they've got their own system cooking.
Mhm.
We're not worried about that until we're about to be just now. Okay, so here we go. Josephus is saying that God rules by the law, and the priests interpret and administer it. Great. But he can never really justify that to the non-Jews, because they're just not going to get it. Okay, so now we have from priests to sages. The sages do not like the priests, right? The sages think that the priests are idiots and they don't deserve to be in charge, okay? Now, the rabbis are writing after the destruction of the temple. And if the temple is the basis of power in the country, and the temple's been destroyed, the priests have lost all their power, haven't they? The rabbis need to take over. But the rabbis just can't take over by saying, oh, we're in charge now. They have to show that they were in charge even before they took over. That they're just continuing what was there before. I should rule today because I ruled yesterday. So how do they do that? So they, you know what retconning is? Retcon.
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 R-E-T or W-R-E?
Retroactive
Retro,
something, it
ret-
must be an
Against something?
abbreviation.
Retcon, right. It's a
Constructor.
it's a retroactive, and it's I'm not sure what the con actually is. Construction. So here's right. So here's
the fact that
so after the fact we're going to rewrite history, right? So it's like
Others do it,
here's a classic example.
sure.
Okay, Superman. What are Superman's powers when he's first created? In the book?
X-ray vision.
Nope.
No?
No, he doesn't have any of those things. He can jump really high.
From full.
He can lift things, and he's strong. And that's it.
No X-ray vision yet. Huh?
No. Now, 45 years later, we decided, hey, let's give him X-ray vision. Now, I'm going to tell a story about Superman that happened in the night that was when he was much younger. So I'm going to tell the story. I'm going to retcon it to say, no, he always had X-ray vision. He even had X-ray vision then. They just never told you about it. It's changing the backstory. It's George Santos. It's like George Santos describing what he is and everything he's done is a retcon of his life. Because he didn't do any of those things. But in his narrative, all those things happened. It's been retconned. It's been fixed.
Yeah, but no, there's no way you could prove it.
Well, you're right, except with George, we can prove that
We
he's
can.
making it up.
Yes, we
Yeah.
can.
After the fact.
Right. So I'm telling my version of the story of how it was.
Okay.
Okay? So this is the rabbis.
it's rewriting history.
It's rewriting history, yeah. So they're retconning history. So, okay. So remember how in the chapter, I think it was chapter 16, where this is what the high priest does and all the things the high priest does? You know, he has to do this, and he offers this, and he does this, and he hop up and down, and all the whole thing. Were there any rabbis mentioned in there?
The one thing about it.
No. But here's the rabbi's version of what the high priest is doing. Okay, 7 days before Yom Kippur,
That's what we do on Yom Kippur.
yeah, they remove the high priest from his house, and they designate another priest in his stead, lest that first priest become disqualified. Okay, so that's new. Because already we're putting it out, the priest might screw it up before he even shows up. Okay? And you should designate another wife for him in case his first wife dies, and they need to have a replacement wife because he has to be married, right? And you need to have a backup wife for the backup wife, okay? And there's no end to this. Okay, so let's just, enough. Okay, now, all the 7 days, he practices doing the stuff under the rabbi's instruction, okay? Because it could be, being the high priest, It's a political office. He's probably never offered a sacrifice in his life, and he doesn't know what he's doing, right? So now we've taken this from the high priest being the highest priest to being this, charlatan, right? So they provide the high priest with elders, and they perform the order of the day, and they say, my master high priest, read the order, and with your own mouth, perhaps you forgot, or perhaps you don't know how to read, right? They stand him up, and so this is the rabbi's version, right? They're holding him by the hand, they tell him what to do, they don't trust him to be on his own, okay?
He's like an imbecile.
He's an imbecile. Yeah. Okay. So this is this notion that the rabbis want to set themselves up as the replacement for the priest. But this is easy. Look, without us, the priests wouldn't have known what they were doing anyways. Now that the priests are gone, shouldn't you trust us? Because at least we're the ones who are telling the priests what to do.
And they wouldn't have sleep.
I was gonna say that, but I'm describing him like an imbecile.
Yeah.
If he couldn't read Torah, if he didn't know Torah.
Doesn't know how to read.
Right. Somebody
Yeah.
else would read for him.
Yeah, and they would cry. He would
Right,
cry.
it's
This was payback for being the highest driver.
yeah, I guess, right? Because, they got to be there. Okay. And the rabbis really want to put the priest in his place. Okay? So,
And they want to take the place of the priest.
So let's look at this one, page 15, number 14. So in here, the text in boldface is actually in the Talmud. The text in normal face is what we're interpreting so you can understand what it means. Okay. So it's taught in a Mishnah. The people escort the high priest to his house, and he would make a feast for his loved ones. The high priest makes a feast for his loved ones. The sages taught in a Baraita, meaning in a Mishnah that didn't make it into the Mishnah. There was an incident involving one high priest who exited the holy temple, and everyone followed him. When they saw Shammai and Avtalon, the heads of the Sanhedrin, walking, in deference to them, they left the high priest by himself and walked after Shammai and Avtalon. Okay, so here's Shammai and Avtalon, here's the priest, here's the people are following the priest goes over here, the people go over here because they want to follow the sages. Now, who is the priest? The priest is descended from Aaron the high priest. Yes. Shammai and Avtalon? What's special about Shammai and Avtalon, these great sages?
Probably know something.
They're converts. Shammai and Avtalon weren't born Jewish. They became Jewish and they became sages. The people have a choice. Do I want the guy with the yichus? Or do I want the people with the knowledge, right? Which is more important? Aristocracy or knowledge, right? So the people start following Shammai and Avtalon. Well, okay. Yeah. So, eventually, Shammai and Avtalon came to take their leave of the high priest before returning to their homes. So the high priest is envious. And he says to them, let the descendants of the Gentile nations come in peace. So he puts them down. He reminds them, hey, yeah, Goyim, you should go in peace, right? They said to him, let the descendants of the Goyim come in peace, who perform the acts of Aaron, who loved and pursued peace. And let not a descendant of Aaron come in peace, who does not perform the acts of Aaron, and speaks condescendingly to the descendants of converts,
Mhm.
right? In other words, what they're saying is, you, Mr. Priest, may say that you are the descendant of Aaron, but you're the descendant only in terms of your genome, biological. But we are the descendants, the true descendants of Aaron in terms of his values.
Jesus?
What? Huh?
Messianic.
Whoa, where'd that come from?
Well, because they say that they are.
Aha, yeah, okay. They say they're the real Jews.
Mhm.
Yeah, no, but this is the rabbinic argument. The rabbinic argument is the rabbis are the true heirs of the priests and not the actual priests. Okay? Who do you stand up for in the synagogue? The rabbi or the Kohen?
Yeah, it's a very rubber.
Ah, so there you go, okay? Like the Kohanim, it's like, oh, let's be nice to the Kohanim. We'll let them go first. The poor little egos. We'll just, we'll let them have the first. You can be the first to make motzi. You can be the first to do Birkat Hamazon. And I'm being silly. I'm nothing against you.
That's okay.
You can be the first to have an aliyah. And you can do the whole blessing
Oh,
thing.
yeah, but when we do that, then
Right.
we understand.
That's true. And you'll feel really good about yourself, and then we'll do all the important stuff. And we'll tell you how to do it. Right, even then, this is beautiful, right? When the Kohanim go to bless the people, what's the procedure? The rabbi feeds them the words word by word. Right? The rabbi goes,
Well,
Yivarechacha, Yivarechacha. I don't know, right? They're spoon feeding you. Oh, the egos of these guys, they're,
I guess
the rabbis, I
I'm
mean.
confused by time here.
Yeah, okay.
At one point, the high priest was just, as you said, the person who paid the highest price.
Right.
So he had no yichus at all.
Yeah, but we pretended.
He seemed to be from some family that would have.
Well, he wouldn't have been from any family. Did he have to be a Kohen?
Yeah, you had to be a Kohen, you had to be a
Of course.
Kohen.
well,
Hasmonaim, or,
You had to be a Kohen. It's like, the rabbis can only do anything because they are continuing on the function of the priest. And the mere fact that there happen to be actual priests around doesn't bother them. And some priests are smart. They become rabbis. Okay, now.
Levitical priest.
Sure.
Levitical priest, as
Sure.
opposed to Levitical. priest.
Right, yes. Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
the rabbi of my congregation when I grew up was a Kohen.
Right.
Mhm.
And it was so great, except he couldn't do funerals properly.
Mhm.
I
And
don't know what happened.
Yeah, my favorite was a Kohen, I believe.
No, he wasn't, he
Wasn't,
wasn't.
I thought he was, no?
okay.
Much simpler thing, wasn't.
But I never went to funerals, so I didn't know what Rabbi Riddles did.
Okay.
Can you Google it?
No,
So here's one more text here to look at. Okay.
I'd be curious.
What?
That's just a curiosity, if you have a rabbi who's a Kohen.
Well, there are such.
I used to do the funerals for the Orthodox community in Bangor, Maine, because Fred Nebel was a Cohen.
Oh, okay.
And so I would be inside the ceremony at the cemetery, and he'd be like standing outside on the other side of the fence, yelling the eulogy. It was a big deal. It was a real handicap. Okay. Any mitzvah that is more frequent than another mitzvah precedes the other mitzvah, if the opportunity to fulfill one of them coincides with an opportunity to fulfill the other. That which is more frequent is more favorable. Therefore, we say Shabbat Shalom before we say Yom Tov.
Good job, good job.
The Shabbos, good Yom Tov. The Shabbos comes first, okay? And we put on the talit before the tefillin, because you put the talit on 7 days a week, you only put the tefillin on 6 days a week, okay? That which is more frequent is more beloved, okay? Anyone who's more sanctified than another precedes the other. So you have, who's gonna say Birkat Hamazon? Let's let the Cohen do it, let's let the Levi do it, then the Yisraelite. You know, you wanna stand in line, the Cohen can go first, have the first delay, Israelite have the second delay, okay? Good. If a bull of the anointed priest and the bull of the congregation are brought at the same time for shechting, the bull of the anointed priest precedes the bull of the congregation in all of his actions, okay? Okay. Let's get sexist. The man precedes the woman when there's uncertainty with regard of which of them to rescue or return a lost item to first.
First things first.
Okay, I found a lost item, I found 2 lost items, one belongs to a man, one belongs to a woman. I'm gonna return it to the man first and then to the woman. Okay. The woman precedes the man with regard to whom to provide a garment first, because her humiliation is greater, or to release from captivity due to the concern that she will be raped, okay? So in terms of possessions, we favor the man. In terms of kindness, we favor the woman, all right? We're going to redeem the woman captive before the man captive. We're going to clothe the woman naked person before the male naked person, okay? Sensibilities. When both are subject to degradation, there's concern that the man will be raped, the release of the man precedes the woman. Okay.
In captivity.
That's why we're progressive Jews.
So as I said straight up, we're gonna be sexist. Okay, we're gonna be sexist.
Wait a minute, who said this?
The rabbis.
Proximal.
Okay, and just to tell you, the rabbis are all men,
Yes.
okay? And any woman who teaches, like, other than Bruria
With the exception of everything.
and Ima Shalom, do any of the women in the Talmud have names?
There aren't many women in the Talmud.
Well,
I mean-
there's Ima Shalom
And
and
there's
there's Bruria.
another person who's Method.
Ima Shalom is the wife of Rabbi Eliezer and the sister of Rabban Gamliel. And when Rabbi Eliezer is excommunicated, Ima Shalom is making sure that he doesn't say Tachanun, because if he says Tachanun, she knows that her brother, who excommunicated him, will drop dead, because Eliezer is gonna ask for God to kill Gamliel, and Ima Shalom, out of concern for her brother, is preventing her husband from praying. She never leaves him alone on days when you can say Tachanun. However, there was a problem. Either it was a 1-day Rosh Chodesh and she thought it was a 2-day Rosh Chodesh, or there was someone at the door asking for bread at the time of prayer and she wasn't there, and he walks in and he says Tachanun, and the horn is sounded and Gamliel is dead, okay? So she gets named. She doesn't do any halacha, but I think she gets named because it's just easier than using the pronouns. No, she would just prevent you from saying Tachanun. And she says to her brother Rabban Gamliel, she says, lift the ban. For the sake of my husband, you can have another husband. Well, for the sake of me and my children, I'll provide for you. It's like, it's terrible, but she gets a name. I can't think of any other women who actually get a name. Okay, a priest precedes a Levite. A Levite precedes an Israelite. An Israelite precedes a mamzer. Okay? Mamzer is someone whose mother was married to someone else when he was conceived.
I thought that was a Yiddish word.
It's here.
There, yeah.
Mamzer.
It was adopted by the Yiddish because
Yiddish.
Yeah, well, that's what it came
Strong,
from,
that
it came
was-
from the Hebrew.
One of the curse words that I.
Yiddish has a lot of Hebrew, like sheker. That's Hebrew as well, okay?
Oh, really? That's interesting.
Shikur is alcohol.
Sugar.
Yeah, okay. Yes, okay, and kosher is also a Hebrew word. Now, and a convert precedes an emancipated slave. When do these halachot take precedence? In circumstances where they are all equal in terms of wisdom.
What do you judge that?
None of them have a degree. I don't know. We're just gonna pull it as possible that people can figure out who's wise amongst each other. Right? We all know a wise person.
So they have to agree.
Yes, I understand. But if they're all at the same level of wisdom, those are the rules. However, if there were a mamzer who is a Torah scholar and a high priest who's an ignoramus, the mamzer Torah scholar precedes the high priest who's an ignoramus, and the Torah wisdom surpasses all else. Okay, again, the rabbis wrote this.
They were in it.
It's written for those times,
It's written-
because.
It's written to justify themselves. So the Bible's written to justify King David, you know? So we're gonna have to go to rabbis next. But, God gives power to knowledge, Torah to Moses. God gives authority to Aaron. Moses gives teachings to the rabbis. Actually gives it to the prophets, maybe. Aaron is the priests. And then, but when we get to the rabbis, they get this. And they get that. The rabbis have stolen the priestly due.
Because of their knowledge.
Because of their knowledge and
Chutzpah.
wisdom and chutzpah, which is to say, Plato believes that the ideal republic is with a philosopher king.
Mhm.
And Plato would like to have any philosopher as opposed to any king, right? You want to have the intellectual people running the government.
Because they know everything.
You want to have a
Are those technocrats?
technocrats, sure, but it's a okay, it's not a
Meritocracy?
thank you, that's it.
Wow.
We want a meritocracy, But in America-
Heading towards that.
but in America, we don't, the rabbis are a meritocracy. Right? And you know why Rabbi Soloveitchik was the most important rabbi in America?
Why?
Because everybody respected
He's
him.
fitting his line.
He impressed everyone. Everyone was impressed by him. That was it.
So what did that get him? I mean,
He got listened to. Yeah. What he said went.
No.
He was the chief rabbi of America. There was no official position, but he made all the decisions.
Who was the other?
Rav Soloveitchik.
Oh, but.
Like,
Joseph.
and
Was
he
he
was,
Orthodox?
he was Orthodox. He was like
Joseph.
in the middle of nowhere.
No,
Where was he?
It was like in
I read
No,
both.
in Chicago or somewhere, I don't know.
Feinstein.
Feinstein,
Good, yeah.
sure, Feinstein. In his generation, Feinstein was like
I thought
Soloveitchik.
that they were both in the same generation.
Could be. But
Well,
one
I
was
don't
more
know.
Talmudi and one was more halachic. Okay, but they were like, yeah, they were, they were gods. Okay, whereas we have rule by popularity. So for example, if you want to,
It's Minhag Stam.
Minhag Stut.
Stut.
Yes, Stam is ordinary, Stut is stupid. Okay, so, look, we just had an election for a judge. Was it a meritocracy appointed judge, or was it a popularity elected judge?
Yeah, here it's popular,
In Pennsylvania,
it's popular.
it's popular.
So, like, class is over, but I just want to share with you the great insight I had about what is wrong with America. When British Petroleum ran into trouble because their well in the Gulf created problems, there was the president resigned. So they needed to find a new president of BP. And I had a surefire way for them to get the best president. Every BP employee, from the gas jockey to the secretary in the office, to the guy on the oil rig, to the people in the lab, to the people in sales, anyone who worked for BP, janitor, they should all get one vote. And anyone who works for BP should be able to put their hat in the ring. And whoever gets the most votes should be the new president.
Who would be the one who would pay them the most?
No, just straight up
Yeah,
popularity.
but who are they gonna
Okay.
vote for?
So they're gonna vote for whoever is the most popular, like, John the janitor is gonna say it, and
Who's gonna give you the
Sophie the
raise?
secretary, what?
Who's gonna give him the biggest raise?
Well, they can have all a platform, but then have the election. And then whoever got the most votes would become the president, and the most votes might be just 33%, because there's like 10,000 people running. And I say, isn't this the best way to get a president? And everyone says, no, you can't run a company that way. You need a president who's like qualified.
That's, they want to run a country rather than a corporation.
But if you want to run a country,
Yeah,
any idiot will do.
apparently.
To run for judge, do you have to be a lawyer?
No.
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 Well, no, it depends on what
It
level.
depends on the state.
It's nice to
It
be a
also depends on the
lawyer, but you
level
don't
of
have
the
to.
judge. If you get higher up, I think you need approval somewhere along the line, but low level,
The
nah.
magistrates don't have to.
But above that,
I mean,
you
so it's the local judge. If you go, there's one in Morrisville, right? There are
It's
various.
according to whatever your state law is, if
There's
it's
a
a
judge
state
in Ben
judge.
Salem was
And it's
on.
according to the federal law.
There's a judge in
It's
Ben
a-
Salem.
Yeah, the one you
And
go
Matt,
to
and Matt
for a small
Weinberg's not a
claim.
lawyer. I don't think Matt Weinberg's a lawyer.
Sure he is.
He was
He
prosecuted.
was a prosecutor.
I don't know.
But if you're elected prosecutor,
It's
do you have to be a
Joe was a
lawyer to
lawyer.
run for DA?
He was a lawyer in the courts,
I would think so, but I don't know for sure. I'd have to look it up.
Like,
And it will
Depends on the
vary by state.
yeah, like, didn't he, like, the guy, one of the former presidents or vice presidents was appointed to the Supreme Court. Was he a lawyer, I had to tell you?
Yeah, but there have been Supreme Court justices who are not lawyers. And that's been,
Like, never went to law school?
yes.
look at 8 quarters.
Wow!
He was not a lawyer, fortunately.
Wow! I love this
I
country.
didn't think so. Well, wait a minute. They've been corporate lawyers on the Supreme Court.
Oh, yeah, that's
Well,
not
lawyer.
They're a lawyer.
Yeah.
Um,
Well, I guess when we hit.
You just assumed.
I don't know the answer.
You look it up.
What's the question?
Whoa!
Can't get the answer or offline, can't.
A justice does not have to be a lawyer or a law school graduate.
A Supreme
That's what I
Court,
thought.
it's according to the
But
Constitution.
the question is, have there